series, but other than that, we are exactly where we want to be in regards to everything we're doing. And so I'll be grading the LinkedIn assignments this morning. Coming out of that, I did on last week talk to you about why people succeed in failed assignments. And if you missed class, again, I'm providing those video lectures in that video announcement for those that were either out for a short period or a long period. I'm grouping those by week. For this particular class, I'm sometimes doing multiples in a week. So there was a week 3 video that highlighted the things we did last week as one example. But also some of the particular assignments there might be a particular video for. I believe in the, let's see, did I do one for the resume? No. I did one for, was it pass fail? We're getting ready to do some videos for specific assignments, and I think for those students that aren't here, the larger assignments we'll do videos for. I started to do that for some of the other classes, and so we'll get to that for this class. So again, just keep an eye on those if you're not familiar or if you miss a day or two. This particular week, we're going to wrap up this portion of the resume, cover letter, professional references. We will come out of today with an assignment that gears toward that. And then we're going to move into an internship discussion on Wednesday. And remember, Friday is the day you bring your resume to class, so we do an in-class review. So today will be the day I remind you of that. Always adhere to the schedule and look ahead at what's going on in the schedule. Remember, we've got multiple minor assignments early on that all geared toward professional development. I'll make the assignments, but I'm not going to remind you every time about them. Let's talk cover letter. And so, as you develop a resume, a subsequent document, a subsequent piece of material that not all organizers prefer, but some do, and we need to look at some rationale and reasons behind that. But in many instances, not necessarily for an internship, but particularly for that first professional job, you're going to be expected to prepare a cover letter. And so I want to talk about logistics of a cover letter. I want to talk about some of the do's and don'ts of a cover letter, and how you can discern when one's appropriately or properly needed or not. And so you prepared this resume, you have this advertisement of who you are. It's a piece of communication. It's designed to inform someone about you, and you're ready to send it, and you're uncertain whether or not you need to send a cover letter. Now, one of the great ways to discern that is in many instances, job placements, job announcements, job postings, what are called position postings, will often actually discern whether or not a cover letter is required. And actually, in some instances, they may also say resume, cover letter, and or references, where you actually provide the full references, or a lot of times you would put at the bottom of the resume references upon request. So if they don't request them, you would always identify references upon request. But if you do note that they require them, and in several jobs I've applied for through the years, they want those ahead of time, because when they look at the package, through the onboarding system of uploading many, many documents, there is this desire for the provider to look at all the material at once. But for us who are freshly graduating and going out and you're applying for your first professional job, you may find that many of them will cite or identify that a cover letter is required. And if so, we need to be prepared to procure one or write one. So I'm curious, let me just ask you, do anybody in here think they know what a cover letter is or what it might represent? Just speak it out if you think you know.
Maybe it's like a letter that best represents you as like the person and your accomplishments.
Okay, someone else. What is a cover letter? What is it when you hear that?
It's a letter where basically you describe your competencies and why you fit perfectly in the job description.
Okay. Someone else. Yes, Taylor. No, you're just scratching. Preface? What's a preface, for those that may not know that?
Like an intro kind of.
Okay, a precursor.
Yeah, like you say, like I'm good for this job, then you list the applicant.
Okay, good. I think all of that can summarize. It is a formal document, so a cover letter has to be well-written because it's a formal document. In some regards, it precludes your resume. Remember, the resume is the advertisement of you, but the cover letter is a little bit more of the story of you. So you want to introduce the story, you want to introduce the narrative, you want to introduce the juicy stuff about you is found in the resume. But the introduction, if you ever read a book, there's usually a 2 or 3 page or sometimes 2 or 3 paragraph introduction before you get to chapter 1. In fact, for those that are in the leadership class, Maxwell's introduction is probably 4 or 5 pages, and then you get to chapter 1, which is influence. Well, the introduction, the telling of the story, the kind of direct, easy read, the kind of results-driven information, just this little narrative about you, why you might be a good fit, why you're attempting to convince the reader that they should at least look at you. That little bit of narrative, written in narrative paragraph form, remember the resume is just choppy pieces. It's just logistical biographical information. The resume is fragments, lots of sentence fragments and data fragments and information fragments about you. And then a nice, clean, pretty, not hyper thorough, but a nice, clean, well-written introduction. And it is narrative. It has to be a story. It has to thread from the opening sentence to the end. It does need to read and thread and seam well. That narrative is a formal document, yes, but it is an introduction, a precursor, and it preludes the logistics about you. You do tell a story. You need to be direct. It needs to be fairly easy to read. So in a lot of instances, you won't use the big management terms in the narrative about you like you might use in the resume about you. It does identify maybe 1 or 2 of the key reasons why you think you are a good fit for them and why you think they should look at you. So there has to be some sense of rationale in a cover letter that says, I really am qualified for this position. I really am desiring to come to work for Adidas. I really do love working in coaching, and this is a good fit for me because I've studied this. And so you have to at least tell the company or the hiring agent or the position agent or the HR director in a short narrative story of why you feel like you and they would be a good marriage. So in some regards, Alex, you're attempting to convince them. Millie, you are attempting to win them over. It's a reader, they're reading it, and so you're the writer, writing a narrative, a bit of a story. So in this chance, it allows you the opportunity to again create a story about you, not fictitious, not in error or errant, but a story that does honestly tell some highlights about you and key things about you in a nice creative story that captures their attention, addresses the position you're applying for, and asks for an opportunity to be interviewed. So in a cover letter, you would always start with the simple addressing of an individual, and I'll send you a sample. It's a real good sample I'll put in Blackboard. And then you would identify that, hey, I saw the job posting on teamworkonline.com or rec department, greenvillerecdepartment.com or the YMCA National Vacancy List. And if any of you desire to work in those fields, those are specific databases, and we subscribe to actually some of those. So if you're interested in those, let me know. But I'm a senior sport management major. I'm a graduate student in the MBA program. I am this. And I saw the job posting. I read the job announcement. I received the job placement information, and I desire to be a candidate. I desire to apply for, and you would list the title of the position, senior level administrator or assistant coach or GA coach at USC or strength and conditioning coach at Anderson University. And I plan to complete the online application, or I plan to submit my documents in the onboarding manner, whatever their manner. So the first thing you would do is simply say that, hey, I'm interested in applying for this. This is where I found it. This is the position. Because sometimes organizations may have lots of positions advertised. and lots of positions available. In fact, we had a graduate of ours a year or two ago. It's a great example, and I like to use this. He was applying for a position in a particular organization, and he didn't realize that this organization had a multiplicity of positions available. And so this young man was applying for this particular position, and they came back to him and they said, you know, you're not really a good fit for this position, but what you didn't know is we had this position available, and we actually feel like you're a really good fit for this position, so we'd like to interview you for this position, but we're not going to talk to you about this position. What do you think about that? And he said, absolutely. And they actually took him through the process and hired him in a subsequent lateral position. I wouldn't say similar job, but a better fit for that individual and a really good professional start. So you don't know necessarily what the organization's thinking, what's going on inside the hierarchy, what they're really planning to do, or what the position availabilities are in plurality. So it is always good to express yourself in the narrative and make note, this is the position I'm applying for. However, they know that you might be very open to a lateral move or progressive upward move, or even a downward move because you're trying to get in the organization. Once you've done that, then you're only going to write about 2 paragraphs of narrative. You're only going to write about 2 paragraphs that emphasize you. And this is your opportunity to briefly express why you're qualified for the position that you've just identified. Why you feel like you're the good fit. It gives you the chance to sell yourself, to self-promote per se, to identify, well, I have qualifications and I have credentials and I have experiences and I am the perfect fit for this. And this 2-paragraph narrative is your chance to tell your story and convince them in 1 minute or 30 seconds why they don't need to go any further but to look at Grayson and look at Garrett and look at Matt. Say, you need to interview me because I'm perfect for this job. So you actually are given the chance to hyperbole, to bloviate. What's that mean, Alex? Those are marketing terms. To really hyper express and sell yourself, yes. It has to be accurate, it has to be ethical. Yes, you can't lie about yourself. Don't say things you didn't do. Don't bloviate beyond what you can. But if you did this and you've done that and you had this experience and you've had that, and yes. And so here's a real good example. We had a student, this would have been about 8 years ago, that this young man was a student of ours, just like you, in sport management. He was the president of the Sport Management Society for a couple of years, and he loved volunteering for that golf tournament that I run every year. And so for 2 years, he basically volunteered and worked in that golf tournament. He sold, in those 2 years, I think he sold 4 or 5 hole sponsors. And then he went up to development, and he worked with Jason Ross for a minute and actually helped secure something for the annual fund. And so he did a little bit of that fundraising. So he was able to write in a couple of lines, I sold over $3,000 or $4,000 worth of whole sponsors and fundraising for the annual fund for North Greenville University. And Jason Ross and I were both 2 of his 4 references. He noted that, and this particular hiring agent saw that, and when they called him for the interview, one of the first things they asked him was, tell me about your sponsorship experiences, because in the position he was hiring for, or being hired for, and he actually got the job, what he didn't realize is they were looking for somebody that had some significant sponsorship-related experiences. Not necessarily selling, but sponsorship, because there were several events that this person was going to be involved in, and when they saw that he was involved in events and had successful sponsorship experiences, that's what they were looking for. And he actually landed that job at Francis Marion University, working in their athletic department. And that did entail some event management stuff and the chance to sell and do sponsorship stuff. But he landed that interview, and they told him when they saw that in his cover letter, they knew they needed to talk to him. Now that didn't make him the #1 candidate. That didn't secure the job for him. But you're looking for a chance to do an interview. Remember, the whole thing about a resume is I just want a chance to get in front of them. I want to be able to sell myself. And so the supplemental piece that supports that is to have a great cover letter. And if you put the right stuff in the cover letter in such a way that tells a great story about you and why you're a good fit, you'll get those looks. Remember I told you for the last couple of weeks, there are over 200 sport management programs in this country. And in this May, on average, if those 200 programs graduate 20 or 30 students, because we graduate about 20 to 30 every semester, and they graduate 20 or 30. Now, some are bigger, some are smaller, but it's just general averages. That means, on average, there's 4 or 5, 100 to 1,000 fresh new graduates coming out of the North American programs. And that doesn't include the kids coming out of business schools that want to work in sport. That doesn't include the kids coming out of graduate schools that want to work in sport. The industry is flush with competition. Now that's a good thing, because as employers like a competitive marketplace, because they like to be able to look over lots of candidates to be able to grab the cream, which always rises to the top. So you must make sure that you're competitively ready for a very competitive marketplace. So a great place to sell yourself is in your cover letter. Demonstrate your qualifications and your credentials in writing up a couple of paragraphs. And it always applies toward the position. So if you're applying in this area where there's a sales marketing position, and you've had some really successful sales marketing experiences, and you can even identify some of the metrics, the actual data, like I sold we had a young man that, let me see, when we were doing football games over the last 10 or 15 years, I would help run the Crusader Club tent. And just as an example, we had a young man about 2 years ago sell a $1,000 Crusader Club membership to somebody, and I don't know if he did or not, but he could have put that in his resume, that he had an experience like that. If you've had experiences where you've run significant events, if you've had coaching experiences, we have several coaching majors who are currently coaching at the high school level or at the club level. We have one that's in a AAU developmental program where he's a coach. And so for those of you that have a significant high school or junior high or developmental club coaching experience, you can certainly identify with you. I've coached AAU 14 ball for 3 straight years. I'm the Wade Hampton High School's assistant football coach. I've been on staff for 2 years. You know, those significant things can stand out in a cover letter that they want to see. Now, they'll look deeper to actually verify it in the resume, but if you have a significant experience like that, that really bodes well for the position you're hiring. You certainly want to identify that. If you have data, that's a great place to show off some data. So if you have data-driven examples are always highly regarded or highly thought of, because those can be verified. You can't really lie about data. You either did this and the data supports it, or you didn't. So data supporting your accomplishments are huge. And I'm talking about business accomplishments. I'm talking about coaching accomplishments. I'm talking about ministry accomplishments. I'm not talking about on the athletic field. But those sorts of things are what they're looking for. Remember, they're trying to hire you because of what you can do for them. Now, I know that may sound a little manipulative or selfish on their part, but that's the truth. The truth is they're looking for, remember what I told you the first couple of days, performers and achievers, people that'll make them better. What can you bring to their organization? What can you contribute to actually enhance what they already do? So you need to be thinking like that, and those achievements and accomplishments, Taylor, you need to be able to identify those in the resume, and you can narratively express those in the cover letter. So any data-driven examples that you can provide are absolutely ideal. And in those 2 paragraphs, you can write about those. So this chance to write a good cover letter allows you to kind of play with that narration. And then after you've done that, you want to simply close by requesting consideration. I welcome the chance to discuss this with you. I really look forward to meeting you. I would love to talk with you more about my experiences. I would like to be able to show you that I can contribute to your organization. I hope we get a chance to meet. Sincerely, Ivana. Nick. And then you sign off. So the cover letter is neat and clean and concise. It is not a huge, a two-page summation of your entire life. It's a little introduction, it's 2 paragraphs of narrative, and a salutation that ends that. Now, there's probably a few other, what I would say, do's and don'ts of things you could or shouldn't do. And I've actually put those in Blackboard, so I will show you where those are. For those of you that are on your computer, if you go into the professional resume folder, there is a sample cover letter and a cover letter logistics. And the cover letter logistics is just some basic do's and don'ts, and that would include a few choice words to use or words to avoid. So avoid trite words, for example. Avoid empty, worthless language. Don't fabricate or exaggerate, you know, those kind of things. Don't mention salary requirements or what you're expecting. In fact, going all the way through an interview process, unless you're asked, you never want to inquire about that stuff until you're actually offered the job. And at such point in time, then you can determine whether or not that's what you're really wanting. Too often, I think Maxwell has said it, and I think I've mentioned it a time or two, is that if one of the first things you say is, how much is this gonna pay me and how much time off do I get? We'll tell you nothing because you're not the right candidate. So you have to be careful that you aren't pursuing a job just because you want money. Remember, you need to be pursuing a job because you want to work for them. You want to contribute to them. You really want to coach football. You really want to be a baseball trainer. And this is a great opportunity for you to learn and grow and contribute to that organization. And if you have that healthy, external, kind of selfless mindset, then they're going to be really receptive to that. But if you come into an application process or an interview process, and it's all about me, they're gonna sense that and sniff that out in a minute, and you won't make it very far. So, in the cover letter, I would also note if there are any specific instructions in the job announcement. So in particular, if they list in the job announcement, please tell us specifically about this. Then they're looking for someone that has these certain certifications, these certain things. So if you're applying for a strength and conditioning and coaching position, and they want to know if you have certain strength and conditioning certifications, USA Weightlifting, the American College of Sports Medicine's Fitness Leader, or some of those kind of things. There's 4 or 5 really, the CSCA, CSCS ones. If they ask for those in specific, then you either need to identify that I do have those or that I don't have those, but I'm willing to pursue those right now. Don't ever mention salary requests or requirements, and don't use too many of your management terms, which are going to be used in the resume. This is a chance for you to tell a story, and so use keywords that kind of help highlight or narrate something about you. It's a chance to actually kind of express a little bit about you, and not just data and informational, which is the resume. You get a chance to creatively tell a story. So you can look at the sample cover letter that I put in there. You can look at some of those do's and don'ts, statistics and logistics. And it is in that folder under professional resume. It's just under that. There's a 2 hyperlink sample right there. So as I stop at this point, we'll cover references in the next class. Do any of you have any questions about cover letter or want to carry on this discussion any further? Are there any questions specific to cover letters? If you've never written one, I'm going to assume most of you have, and this is your great first opportunity to do so. You may want to spend some time crafting yours. The resume assignment in here, you're not applying to any one specific position, so just imagine your ideal position, and you can curve your cover letter toward that ideal position. However, if you're already applying for internships, or you kind of know the internship you're going to pursue, you can obviously gear your cover letter toward that internship. Let me talk about the next assignment, and this particular assignment relates to a minor yet significant component to your resume. Now, in many instances, when you advance into a given industry or you advance into a given profession, there are many, many professional organizations that operate to serve that actual profession. And we're very fortunate in sport and sport management to have really a distinct sport management profession with a number of professional organizations, or what we call professional associations. And so this next assignment is you looking at some of the professional associations and organizations that are out there, and you'll actually join two and include that in your resume at the bottom of the resume. And so we want to be able to help you get involved in the professional associations that are available in sport, the coaching associations, the ministry associations, or many of these sport business organizations. And so what we've done is Dr. J and I a long time ago put together a significant list of many of the professional associations. There are many sport law associations, there's youth sports associations, there's coaching associations, there's sport information associations, there are a ton of strength conditioning associations, there's even some specific football associations and baseball and hockey and soccer and lacrosse associations. So Dr. J and I put together a list of, it's about 8 or 10 pages long, and it has paragraph descriptions of the various associations, and several of them, most all of them have the hyperlinks to be able to go to the website to read more about the associations where you can join those. And so the assignment is to join 2 professional associations and read more about them and learn more about them. And then in Blackboard, you'll submit a description of the 2 associations or professional organizations that you joined and the reasons why. Now, we always encourage our students to join the COSMA Association, which is the Commission on Sport Management Accreditation, and that's the first one that'll be in the list. But it's not required, but it does have a free membership, and I would say about 3/4 to 80% of these are all free to students and or working professionals. There are a few that have minor fees to them, and you can choose to avoid those if you like, but if you really come across one you like, you can choose to join that. If you ask Dr. Battenfield and I, him and I probably belong to 2 or 3 organizations. I know one particular one I pay $250 a year, and another one I pay $50 a year, and a second, a third, and a fourth are free. So depending upon which ones you choose, you'll have to determine what the qualifications are and whether or not there's a fee. But certainly you can select those that have no cost to them. The COSMA one is free and has no cost to them. But your assignment for coming out of today is to take that list. Now I'll send that list in a PDF to you. Once I get back to class, we'll do a short video and I'll send it out. And then you just join 2, and then in Blackboard you'll actually identify those 2. I would put those at the bottom of your resume under that last little section and identify that you've just become a member of this association, you're a member of that association. Those organizations will offer conferences. Some of them send out newsletters, some of them have journals, some of them have a quarterly or biannual informational pieces. They may have great websites, they may have message boards or blogs. It'll help you connect further with your industry. The people that join those specific associations all work in that field of our profession. So the sport profession is very big, and if you want to go into lacrosse, or you want to go into coaching, or you want to go into tennis, it has its own narrow niche, and there are associations that are tied to that. And a great way to begin to network further and connect with individuals that work in that specific discipline or arena of our profession is to join some of those associations, begin to connect with them on conferences, through research, through the websites, through the message boards, even to meet up and try to get to know them. So it's a great way to help advance your career. And I'll send this database out. It's probably 8 or 10 pages. It'll be in a PDF document, and you'll be able to take the hyperlinks and begin to look for them. Now, if you happen to find one that you prefer that's not on that list, you are more than welcome to join one or more that are not on that list, but they do need to be in the sport profession. Whether or not they directly link to where you're going or what you want to do or not, that's subsequent. So you just join 2 and let us know about that. Are there any questions about that particular assignment? Just as an ongoing reminder, I would be working on your resume to have that ready Friday. I would be working on your professional research research topic, because that's the big presentation at the end. And I might even start looking up some succeed and fail articles, or even some interviews, to begin to gather some information for that. That actually is after your presentations, that's in the month of April, if I remember right. So we've pushed all those presentations back, but now's the time to begin to start to gain a little traction and momentum and get that stuff going. If there's not any questions about that, you're free to go. I'll see some of you in marketing this afternoon. Don't forget, we're studying leadership as we